It's a webinar on raw deals or just transitions, rethinking critical raw materials, human rights, and development in resource-rich states. This webinar is organized by the Justice, Peace and Integrity of Creation Commission of USG and UISG in collaboration with Africa Europe Faith and Justice Network. So the webinar will be in English. There is translation in French. So if you prefer to follow the webinar in French, go to the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and click there and select French. So at this point, we would like to start the program of today. We are going to have an opening prayer guided by Sister Jacinta Miranda. Then we will introduce our topic, and we will have two presenters, Brother Rodrigo Pere of Church and Mining Network, and Brother Elvis Ngandwe from Africa Europe Faith and Justice Network. At the end of each talk, we will give 5 minutes with a musical background, during which you may post in the chat your comments or questions, and which we will retrieve for the last part of this webinar, where we are going to have interactions. So you can interact through the chat. So at this point, I would like to invite Sister Jacinta to lead us with the opening prayer.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. God of justice and compassion, in this Jubilee year of 2025, a year of hope and renewal, we gather in your name to seek wisdom and courage. May this be a true time of Jubilee, not only of celebration, but of restoration. A time to release the chains of injustice, to free the land from exploitation, and to restore dignity to those whose voices are too often silenced. Scripture reading from the book of Leviticus, chapter 25:10. You shall follow the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. Lord, as we reflect today on critical raw materials and their impact on human lives and our planet, we ask you to open our eyes and our hearts to see the people behind the resources, communities in Zambia, the Dominican Republic of Congo, and beyond, whose lives are touched by decisions made far from their homes. To hear the cry of the earth and cry of the poor, as Pope Francis reminds us in Laudato Si. to work for true peace and integrity of creation, not merely through words, but through policy, solidarity, and shared action. Let us now conclude this prayer. God of all nations and creation, let this webinar be a source of truth-telling and transformation. Guide the speakers, stir the hearts of all participants, and inspire solutions rooted in justice, peace, and care for our common home. May we never forget that copper and cobalt, lithium and nickel are not just commodities, but bearers of responsibility. As Prophet Micah calls in Micah chapter 6:8, what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God? Let this pray our prayer and our path forward. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Microphone.
Thank you, Sister Jacinta, for this inspiring prayer that connects us also with the Jubilee year. And in fact, we know that the themes we are going to discuss today are very much related to the biblical Jubilee. And so we are going, let me share my screen, just a second. Just a second. So I'm going to introduce the first speaker of today. Ecco. So our first speaker is Brother Rodrigo Pere from the Churches and Mining Network. He is a Brazilian Franciscan friar with a degree in civil engineering, and he serves as an advisor to the Special Commission on Integral Ecology and Mining of the National Conference of Bishops of Brazil. Also, he's a member of the coordination team of the Inter-Franciscan Service for Justice and Peace and Ecology, linked to the Conference of the Franciscan Family of Brazil. And he has 41 years of experience dedicated to mediating land conflicts and fighting against the impacts of mining, particularly within the framework of the Pastoral Land Commission. And today, Brother Rodrigo is going to focus on the relationship between critical raw material and the different transitions we are going through at this historical time. So, Rodrigo, you are most welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Transitions are leading us to a new geopolitics of transitions based on mining. We're living through what is called of transitions, or rather multiple transitions. The energy, most spoken, transition now occupies a central place in the global struggles for power, economic growth, and security. More than just a response to the climate crisis, what we can see, it has become a strategic axis in the reorganizations of global production chains and of the new multipolar geopolitics of the 21st century. However, it is not isolated. The digital and the military transition accompany it, and they all have something in common. They place the mining sector at the top of the process. Reflecting on the digital transition, it's interesting because when we talk about artificial intelligence, it's often perceived as something immaterial, abstract, with terms like cloud, big data, machine learning, virtualization. But in reality, it depends on vast physical infrastructures, giant data centers, full of servers and processors that require powerful cooling systems. All of this built with critical minerals like gallium, germanium, rare earth, and copper, and so forth. These minerals extracted, refined, and transported, almost always in the regions of the global south, with deep impacts on the environment and local communities. Consumption is voracious. The turnover of components, the demand for more and more computing power, all of this intensifies resource depletion and waste, calling sustainability and justice in the digital age into question. So this growing dependence on critical minerals, we should ask critical for whom, has also become a key pivot in today's geopolitics, especially in the confrontation between the US and China. On one side, China dominates the supply of essential minerals. It possesses almost 80% of the critical minerals and rare earths. On the other hand, in terms of the digital, the US controls much of AI manufacturing and tries to block China's progress in advanced chip development. Bans, sanctions, billion-dollar investments. Technology has become a battlefield. Events like the launch of the DeepSeek R1, a Chinese AI model, have shown how minerals and AI are now central elements of global power. The other transition, the military one, is quieter. We don't talk about a lot, but interconnected with both the energy and digital transition. The military transition is also driven by the rise of critical minerals and rare earths, essential inputs not only for the so-called clean technologies, which not really clean, but also for the defense industry and high precision weaponry. Critical minerals, if we do a more comprehensive reflection, whether for technical or geological reason, now hold strategic status. These minerals have become key assets for national sovereignty, energy, digital infrastructure, military technology, and the dispute over economic hegemony. In other words, mining is more than ever a matter of geopolitical power. In the case of energy transition, to capture and store solar and wind energy, we need technologies that require more and more raw materials. And there lies contradiction. The so-called critical materials like lithium, cobalt, coltan, copper, graphite, nickel, among others, are extracted in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, in most global South countries, and most consumed in the North, in the global North. But who controls these supply chains and profits from them? Transnational companies and wealthy countries. Thus, the clean energy is being built at the cost of a new extractivist and predatory colonialism. Each country defines its list of critical minerals according to its own strategic interests. For example, European Union expand its list from 14 in 2011 to 34 critical raw materials in 2023. The US currently lists 50 items, including copper and gold, but not because of scarcity, because it's a part of the reindustrialization and national security agenda. Under the Trump administration now, and before, but now, this logic became even clearer. The US invoked the Defense Production Act. It's an act that had during the Second World War, but it was released more consistently during the Korean War to boost domestic mineral production. In other words, climate is not the only driver of the transition and of mining expansion. National security is becoming the dominant vector. Now let's have a quick look at China. China dominates not only the extraction, but especially the refining of strategic minerals, critical minerals, such as gallium, germanium, tungsten, antimony, and others. This control gives its enormous power over energy and military production chains. According to some studies, over 78% of the US weapon system depend on materials processed in China. Even the mineral that comes from Australia, if it's refined in China, it cannot be used for the strategic US military purpose. This is the position of the US. Recently, Beijing imposed export restrictions on certain minerals for national security reasons. The result? Prices rose, access to supply dropped, and the US went on alert. Because others are saying that 88% of the US Department of Defense critical supply chains are vulnerable. So we are therefore facing a dual transition, energy and military, that strengthens protectionist policies as well as digital transition. So the US is investing in subsidies, tariffs, and taxes in incentives. The European Union is responding with industrial initiatives and relaxed environmental norms, licensing. Meanwhile, Canada and Australia, long-time allies, are beginning to rethink their alliances in light of the US economic nationalism. On the other side of this equation are countries like Ukraine, Bolivia, DRC, rich and others, rich in strategic resources, being pressured to negotiate their reserves in exchange for political or military support. Mining becomes a tool of geopolitical bargain, a basis of conflict and means of subordination. So the discourse of the green economy and clean energy hides a reality, a new offensive of mining expansion in the territories of the Global South, with environmental destruction, human rights violations, and the continuation of colonial model, now militarized more. So this transition does not break with the logics of the past. It updates them, intensifies them. It displaces communities, deepens inequalities, and reinforces the technological and financial dependence of the South on the North. When we see all the discussion of climate finance, money for the countries to adapt, it means what? Money for new technologies. And those technologies come from where? And at expense of nature and so many violences. The militarization of the energy transition is a serious risk, and it diverts public resources to the defense sector, weakens social environmental commitments, and consolidates a new mineral industrial military complex. Far from solving the climate crisis, it may turn into a fuel for new armed conflicts, especially between US and China, but fueling so many other wars. So we must break it with these false climate solutions. Predatory capitalism now dresses in green and clean tech, but continues to devastate. Faith in the market and a military logic will not solve a crisis that they created. So the transition we need must be just, ecological, and based on solidarity. We need to think on a real transformation, transition to post-extractivism, articulated in 3 stages, from predatory mining to necessary mining, and from this to essential mining. This transition implies not only new public policies, but a cultural, spiritual, and civilizational change. So the church stands alongside communities, fighting for the right to say no to mining, for the recognition of territories free from mining, free from extractivism. It's happening in different places. I know cases in Latin America and in Brazil, and the construction of alternative, circular, and cooperative economies. This is a pastoral of resistance and hope, which combines celebration, denunciation, political education, political efforts, and institutional advocacy. So we need to stand, we must protect the commons, respect the planet's limits, and ensure justice for historically exploited people. So the question is not just what kind of energy, what kind of digital, because military we don't want, we will use, but rather what kind of society, what kind of economic, political, and social system do you want to build? A society based on justice, and as Pope Francis used to talk to us on happy sobriety and care for the planet, care for a common home, not on armed mining of the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Rodrigo. This is really enlightening. You are giving us the bigger picture, of what is behind what is happening, in the mining sector. Many times we hear the news, and we realize that there are some processes of exploitation that are increasing. But your input really helped us to connect, these instances that come to the news with the 2 major transitions of our time. That is the energy transition, which is connected to climate change and also the negotiations to limit global warming and so forth, but also the digital and military transition that are also going together. And so we realize how much of geopolitics and power relations are involved, in this field of mining. It is my pleasure now to share with you just a second the presentation of our second speaker. So I'm going to share my screen. There we are. Our second speaker is Brother Elvis Ngandwe, a missionary of Africa, and the current Executive Secretary of Africa Europe Faith and Justice Network. He's from Zambia with a diverse background in law, international relations, and peace studies. And he is also an advocate of the High Court for Zambia and a member of the Law Association of Zambia and the Commonwealth Lawyer Association. So his legal background underscores his commitment to justice and human rights. And Elvis' past experience includes roles as a human rights officer in Niamey, Niger, and legal social officer in Lusaka, Zambia, where he made significant contributions to the cause of human rights and social development. So, Elvis, after the first input that gave us the bigger picture, around the issue of mining, now we would like really to hear from you how all that impacts on human rights. And so we know that you are going to focus on local communities and in particular on the Zambian case. So Elvis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alberto. Let me share my screen. I've requested to be allowed to share my screen.
Yeah, you can
Once
share
I'm
now.
allowed. Okay. This one. Let me see first. Gosh. I'm sharing what I want to share. Share. Am I sharing something?
No, we can't see.
Let me see.
Yes, now we can see your screen.
Okay.
We can see your screen.
But
All right.
your presentation is not seen. Only the folder.
Yeah.
You have to click.
Let me see.
You have to choose the
Okay.
screen.
You have to
where
open
you are
first
presenting.
your.
It's open, yes.
But you have to choose when you share the screen. You have to choose that particular opened page.
Okay. Let me see.
Yes,
There?
coming. Yes. Can you put in the presentation mode? Yeah.
Okay.
Fine. It's not at the presentation mode has not yet started.
Okay, let me see. Okay.
Good. Go on.
Okay. So, good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. Basically, Zambia's wealth in minerals such as copper, cobalt, and gold has long placed the country at the epicenter of global extractive industry. With the European Union's critical raw materials today and Green Deal, the interest has intensified for critical raw materials from Zambia. Zambia is now poised as a pivotal supplier of the world's green materials and digital transitions. However, these gifts, or rather resources, cause a shift in the central question. Can Zambia's mineral wealth drive sustainable development for its communities, or are we witnessing a new phase of extractivism that sacrifices people for profit? That's a question that this paper wishes to address. Basically, this paper because I'm saying this because it was based on research-based advocacy. So this paper examines the tension between critical raw materials extraction and the human rights from the local communities in Zambia, using a recent environmental disaster in Chambishi as a case study. It interrogates how legal, geopolitical, and institutional frameworks shape outcomes for affected populations. It also critiques Zambia's mining laws in the light of African Charter on Human and People's Rights, and offers policy-oriented recommendations to ensure that the critical raw materials development aligns with social justice and sustainable development. The methods used, basically, this research adopts a qualitative case study approach centered on Zambia. It synthesizes data from field testimonies and media reports from Chambishi mining that affected the rivers and waters in Zambia. About 50 million liters of chemicals were spilled into the rivers in Zambia, in this Chambishi River and Kafue River. And then also, we also look at the soft law standards and the jurisprudence from the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. And also we look at the Afrobarometer survey data of 2024 on public sentiment. And also we look at the EU-Zambia Memorandum of Understanding and on the critical materials and its implications for policy. And also we look at the critical literature on this human rights law and environmental justice. So the connection now with what my brother Rodrigo was talking about mainly here, it will be geopolitics. Now the geopolitics and critical materials, like the race for materials and the scramble for materials, now bringing it to Africa and focusing on Zambia, and try now a bit, I'll touch on Congo because of the neighboring country and the Lobito corridor, but mainly focusing on Zambia. So what are the environmental impacts? The environmental impacts and human rights impact of mining. Zambia's critical raw materials sector is dominated by large-scale mining enterprises with devastating environmental footprints, deforestation for mining roads, and the tailing dumps has depleted local ecosystem. Water pollution from chemical leaks has contaminated major rivers like Kafue, with downstream effects of drinking water, livestock, and agriculture. Airborne pollutants. Airborne pollutants such as sulfur dioxide and dust particles from blasting activities contribute to respiratory diseases, and then it also causes soil degradation. Now, commenting a bit on these respiratory problems, the prevalence of tuberculosis and other respiratory problems in Copper Belt, where I come from, is very high. And then other health outcomes have been particularly grim. Chronic illnesses linked to lead and chemical exposure are common, with children experiencing developmental delays and neurological damage. As one community member noted, the community member said that, one of the respondents said that minerals that power EU cars are poisoning Zambian children. This is an example, although it is AI generated due to copyright issues and so forth, but then it is an example of the reality, what is going on in Zambia. Many parts of Zambia are left like ghost towns because of mining. Life just escaping from people. You can't even cultivate. And yet the mining resources are becoming a curse to Zambia. They are not helping Zambia to develop. On the contrary, they are helping other countries to develop. Now, let's look at the Chambishi disaster. In February 2025, a tailing dam failure at Sino Metals in Chambishi released 50 million liters of toxic waste into the Kafue River. This was followed by reports of illegal acid leaks at other companies operated by Chinese. As a result, there was massive crop failure across 12 villages, collapse of local fisheries, which we are going to see in the video at the end of the presentation. We are going to say YouTube, the collapse of ecosystem, some of the species that we may never see again in these rivers. The fauna was destroyed because of the acid, and the displacement and economic losses, particularly among women, vendors, and subsistence farmers. You hear like this lady who said that these Chinese have come to destroy my maize field. I feel like they have killed me twice, because she said this because they were relocated from where they were. They were forced to relocate because of the Chinese miners who came to mine in those areas they were given by the government. And these people relocated. Now, where they went to after being forcibly relocated, and then the Chinese mining activities poisoned the rivers destroyed actually the ecosystem with acid, and destroyed also the crops, and causing food insecurity. Wow. And then the other weakness, the weaknesses on governance and the legal system as follows. There is what we call insecure customary land rights. This means that the land rights, customary land ownership in Zambia is not at the equal footing with the statutory land ownership. If you own land with a title, which is statutory, you have a better security of tenure than someone who owns land under customary system, and majority own land under customary system. So they are easily pushed out by the government, and they end up finding themselves in the areas every time where they can't even cultivate. Like, that's the reason why that lady said that. Another point is what we call free, prior, and informed consent, abbreviated as FPIC. This one, it's a requirement by the African Charter on Human People's Rights, that when you are trying to do anything on the indigenous land or customary land, you need to get the consent of the people. So this consent has to be free, it has to be prior, and it has to be informed. So meaning you need to give people kind of training and the seminars so that they know what they are consenting to. But this is never done in Zambia. People are just told to relocate and mining start, or they are not relocating, but they start mining next to their doors and they give consent forcibly. And then the environmental and social impact assessment are not done. Even we requested from the EU to give us the environmental impact assessment report. They didn't do one. They don't have one, yet they have MOU with Zambia to extract minerals, and with the Lobito corridor, which also goes up to DRC Congo. It is in this respect, I say, the same fate for Congo, even worse in Congo. And the contracts are not open to the public. They are very opaque, they are very obscure. Majority of people don't know what the Zambian government is signing for. And also, there are a lot of barriers to justice. Access to justice is impossible for many local communities. For instance, the case of the one that I was talking about, the Chinese company that spilled 50 million tons, 50 million liters of acid into the rivers in Zambia. They were not taken to court not because we lawyers couldn't do that, but because there was an interference from the government. And this is the reason in front of your screen. It was influenced and perpetrated by geopolitics and critical raw materials dependence. Zambia owes 4 billion to China, and they have pledged that China is going to get back its money by extracting almost 5 billion worthy critical raw materials from Zambia by 2031. But then I don't have to be a specialist of mining engineering to know that the Chinese obviously will get more than the 5 billion, because they are the ones who are extracting, and they are the ones who are telling the Zambian government how much they're extracting. Of course, people from the Zambian government can help you that they are following but I'm telling you it's not true. So all this is destroying our country, and now we have lost a bit of sovereignty, because even after China poisoned our rivers, our people could not, our government could not allow us as lawyers to sue the Chinese. And now what are the consequences? What happens now is that the people have lost confidence in the Chinese. There is 30% drop in trust in Chinese firms. That's what we have noted. And then also there is the issue of the access to justice, like I said, is being hindered. And then talking a bit now on these geopolitics, I would like to talk on the pitfalls in Zambian mining framework. Customary land tenure under Article 14 of African Charter on Human and People's Rights, I quote as follows: customary land held by rural communities remains unregistered and vulnerable. This violates Article 14 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, the right to property. As in the case from Kenya of Endorosi versus Kenya, Zambia risks breaching regional norms by displacing people for extractive purposes without consent. Another point is the lack of free, prior informed consent under Article 21 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Communities are excluded from meaningful participation in critical raw materials decisions, which breaches Article 21 of the Charter. This article talks about the right to natural resources. The African Charter on People's and Human Rights Working Group on Extractive Industries has explicitly stated that free and prior informed consent is a binding human rights obligation. Another point is on environmental degradation, which comes under Article 24 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. The mining toxic legacy threatens the right to a satisfactory environment. The 2025 Chambishi spill is not isolated. It is part of the system. It's part of systemic regulatory negligence and ecological injustice. Participation is also a problem. The mining licenses are often issued without public disclosure or community engagement, which contravenes Article 13 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, which talks about the right to participation. The government does not consult the local communities. And then access to justice, which I've explained already, why we were not able to sue the Chinese investors because of the debt, and that our sovereignty is questionable as a country. And just benefit sharing is also another problem, which falls under Articles 19 to 21 of the Charter of Africa. While mining profits are expatriated, local communities are left with contaminated rivers, degraded soil, and broken promises. And this is a contradiction of what we aspire for in the Agenda 2063. And then there is also a problem of gender and intersectional impacts. Women are disproportionately affected and segregated as compared to men. So the problem when it comes to the mining issue, the issuance of mining licenses, the few that are issued in Zambia are mainly issued to men and very few to women. Now let me go to conclusion. My concluding remarks are as follows. I would like to insist on the meaning of the human right. A right, according to the international jurisprudence, is a legal claim. If you cannot have access to the judicial system to claim this, then it is no longer a human right, it becomes a privilege. Today in Zambia, it is very difficult to access justice on these issues because most of them are curtailed under these issues of inciting, Cyber Crimes Act, So if you try to reason in these lines, the government can easily accuse you of trying to incite public insurrection, things like that. So Zambia stands, as of today, where we are, Zambia stands at crossroads. It can either reinforce a neo-colonial model of extractivism, where minerals enrich foreign corporations while leaving the local communities poor, or it can pioneer a justice-centered approach that places people and planet before profit. Where is this thing? It's not moving. Okay, there's something on my screen. And then we also have the issue of the emphasis on legal reform, equity, and sustainability. And then another recommendation is that the measure of extractivism should be based on the local communities and human rights. And then for the EU, it is better that the EU, before it engages with Zambia on this memorandum of understanding, and which also includes the DRC, that they look at the status of human rights, due diligence, and the conditions as set by the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. For the civil society, it is also the civil society, meaning including the faith-based organizations like you and I. It is our duty to raise awareness, especially in local languages, so that people can understand and that people can react to that. And also do advocacy by documenting and exposing abuses that are going on, like the video that we are going to see shortly after this. And then push for regional policy coherence. And finally, we must stop mining injustice while mining copper. Minerals must serve people, not harm them. Center dignity, consent, and sustainability. And in that perspective, that is the way we are going to make sure that we create a win-win situation. And in conclusion, finally, I would like to say that the International Bill of Rights in all this has been defied. It has not been respected, because the International Bill of Rights is composed of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the 1966 Convention on Civil and Political Rights, and the 1966 Convention on Economic, Cultural, and Social Rights. All these have been violated, and the people of Zambia, the poor people who are the majority, are living in conditions that are deplorable, not because they are lazy, but because the mining activities that are supposed to improve their condition of living are causing their conditions a very difficult and hell to live in every day. May God help us to gain wisdom to use our resources in Africa for the benefit of our people. And God have mercy on DRC Congo. Thank you.
Thank you, Elvis. And we really appreciate this legal framework perspective. You have highlighted the fact that, yes, the International Bill of Rights, and especially the African Charter of Human and People's Rights, have been violated. But at the same time, you have also highlighted how there are legal weaknesses and legal gaps. That there is an aspect of violation, but there is also an aspect of inadequacy of the legal framework to protect people, especially local communities and the poor and ecosystems, from this predatory approach to mining. And so now we can follow the video you have recommended us.
Africa, a catastrophic environmental disaster is unfolding. Toxic waste from a Chinese-owned copper mine decimates one of Zambia's most important waterways. Our next story tells you as to how greed has killed the rivers, and also the locals are anxious about their lives and livelihoods. Take a look.
In Zambia, the Kafue River, once teeming with life and sustaining countless communities, now carries a deadly cocktail of acid and heavy metals through the country's agricultural heartland, threatening to become one of the continent's worst ecological calamities in recent memory. On 18th of February 2025, a Chinese-owned copper mine in northern Zambia unleashed an environmental disaster. A tailings dam collapsed, spilling 50 million litres of acidic waste, heavy metals and toxic sludge into the crucial waterway. The deadly mix surged downstream, contaminating the Kafue River, Zambia's lifeline. The spill has already killed fish, poisoned crops and spread fear among millions who depend on the river.
This morning until here, we did not catch any fish. Why? The you people Chinese put it to their gases.
It was so fast, according to the guy's explanation who saw it. It was so fast, it was getting bigger and bigger by the minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. By 30 minutes, it was a whole collapse.
Farmers stared in despair at their ruined maize and groundnut fields. Entire communities were left wondering how they would survive. The toxic sludge didn't just pollute the water, it also shattered lives.
When I went to the fish pond, I found that the lime had flowed through the pond and all the fish had been swept away. I just stood in agony, wondering what I would do about the money I spent on the project. I stood there watching because there was nothing I could do.
It is an environmental disaster, really of catastrophic consequence when we consider the fact that cyanometals has polluted a river on which millions of people depend for their livelihoods. We're also talking about wildlife and just the general disturbance which has been given even in not just villages but actual towns.
This is not the first time Chinese-owned mines have been accused of environmental destruction in Africa. Across the continent, communities suffer while foreign companies extract wealth, leaving behind a trail of pollution, deforestation and disease. The Zambian disaster is another brutal chapter in this ongoing exploitation. Bureau Report, World is One.
So just before, just to comment on that video, 1 minute, you could see I couldn't find any video where the government is saying anything, So that's why I could only get a foreign video to show you how vulnerable our government is in front of Chinese, not only in front of the Chinese. It's the same for EU when it comes to negotiation with the government. It's like we have surrendered our sovereignty. Yeah. So there's nowhere, if there was a statement where the government was like warning China, even sanctioning China, I would have played it for you. Try to go on YouTube, maybe you can find it. I'm not trying to be biased, but this is the situation that our country is going through. And so for me, those people who tend to say the fate of DRC, it's because the people of DRC haven't done anything. No, it's not true. The international community is so strong that they sanction these African countries, just shrink them. The civic space in Zambia has shrinked, such that the guy you saw there trying to speak like on phone, these guys were activists before. They were very strong, but today they are very hopeless, because if you try to go outward ballistic, you find yourself in prison. So we need to revamp the civic space so that people speak for themselves. That is the only solution that we can give to these critical raw materials problems, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. Many more problems are coming because of the critical raw materials. The scramble for Africa, part 2 is coming. It will be worse than the first scramble. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elvis. And really, it is disheartening, seeing, as you said, how powerless even governments become, under the pressure of such transnational corporations and the whole system, of extractivism, which undermines sustainable development. So let's have a few minutes pause for the benefit of our interpreter. And meanwhile, take advantage to write your comments and questions in the chat. We will be back just in a few minutes. And now I would like to invite Lucia to help us from the chat. Maybe you can give us some feedback, what participants have commented, and also any questions addressed to our speakers. So you may take maybe 2 or 3 questions at a go, and then we can have more rounds of questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto. And first of all, good evening, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Thank you, Brother Rodrigo, and thank you, Brother Elvis, for your presentation and your speech. Okay, comments or positive comments. Everyone is thanking you for your contribution. And we have a couple of very interesting questions. So we can start with the one of Sister Sheila, which is mainly addressed to Brother Rodrigo. And she's asking, where do you see any collaborative success with the mining concern that you mentioned, Brother? So I don't know if you want to proceed one by one.
Maybe you can pick 2 or 3 questions at a go.
Okay. Still to Brother Rodrigo, one more is this one from Sister Rose. She's saying, my question would be, what would you suggest that we can do as a religious community? How we can work on this? This is a concern from many person today. And then one more from our team. Very good presentation. Do you see any hope still, Brother Rodrigo, for true international agreements that would respect the local and keep major players from exploiting or dominating these critical resources? So these are a couple of questions. We can start with eventually Brother Rodrigo.
Okay, I think we can put all these 3 together in terms of the questions of Sheila, in terms of how we can be collaborative in all these issues, and how the church should, the second question, and what we can do in terms of confronting, in terms of international law also. I think the first is try to understand some really crucial issues. First of all, we are dealing, of course, with a very strong issue, which is the collapse caused by the climate crisis, and especially because of the emissions. However, it was created a consensus, which we agree, which is the decarbonization consensus, which is necessary to stop with fossil fuels, with the emissions, and try to find other means how we can continue to survive in this planet. But however, who decided this decarbonization consensus? Just remember that we lived before that 2 other consensus. The Washington consensus that was talking about what? Diminish the state and the neoliberalism. Then came the commodity consensus. So new extractivism, we're going to make more regulations, we're going to control more, and then we use these so-called resources, which are common goods, for the goods of someone. All of them put the state in the service of the corporations and the solution in the hands of those who are causing the problem. This is one first issue. And I will give one example. Instead of discussing, which is important, the energy transition, and put EVs, electric vehicles, at the top of the solution, because it attracts our imagination. Why don't we talk about what kind of society we want? Are we going to continue to use one person or one family, one car, like in many deep regions, in many areas in the world? Are you going to change the consumerism? Are you going to, which are going to be the values? That's why in the Laudato Si, Pope Francis talk about the happy sobriety. It's not to have less, but it's to have with more intensity. It implies that we as church, we need to be rooted in the territories, close to the people, because the solutions need to come also from people's sovereignty, attempted to the cry of the community, the cry of the earth, and open for dialogue with other different spiritualities, because what is in the stake are the values that we have. Nature can't be treated as an asset, because we're just talking about one part of the big issue, because we have carbon credits, the so-called climate smart mining or the climate smart agriculture. So we're transforming the vital forces of nature into assets and put them in the market. So this is changing. We are getting inside to keep one type of development, one type of using the planet. So this is one aspect. The other aspect is, of course, we're going to be using, we're going to continue extract, because everything we do, everything we have come from extraction. But in which level? In which intensity? Which are the rhythms? The rhythms now are given by the financial system. And we see all this that was described by Elvis here, and he was talking about the Lobito corridor and all the changes. I don't know if you have heard about the global gateways, the new EU policies for commerce and for market, going everywhere, not only looking for the extractives, but to maintain. There's a huge dispute who controls the value chains and the chains, the supply chains. That's a big war. 47 new mining areas in Europe, in 13 countries. What kind of world we want to live? There's no end. We live in a limited world. There is a limit. Life has a limit, and we need to process this on our head and to understand. I like when St. Francis says, praise be the Lord for our sister and Mother Earth, who sustain and govern us. Govern in the sense that we are nature. We live within this logic. We can't destroy this. In terms of struggle for to control this process, of course, we need a change of the system. We need the power of the people in the territories. One of the huge discussion is the so-called post-extractivism. It means there's not going to be no extractivism, but the extractive, what is essential. But this needs to be a decision, a democratic decision in different parts of the world. But at the same time, we need to put the corporations under the law. That's why there's for so many years at the UN a discussion of international binding treaty on human rights and transnational corporations. So they are spread all over the world. When we see those images of the spill, I remember two big spills of the dam breach, mining dam, tailing mining dams in Brazil. one killed 272 people. And the other less, but much more spill, and everything is contaminated, destroyed 2 river basins. At which price? For whom? What remains in the territories, the richness that are in the territories. So from us, how to dialogue? Ecological conversion, strengthening of local churches. So integral ecology conversion, not as an abstract idea, but as a process of involving the reorganization of our way of evangelization, pastoral action, leadership formation, strengthening of basic ecclesial communities, and building of solidarity networks and regional articulation. So the church is called not to legitimize extractivism. So what's the collaboration? The collaboration is to overcome this situation of destruction. There's a huge cry in the extractivism, the way it's practiced, even though in some areas, especially here in Latin America, when we can see, but some areas in Africa that I visit, there's not, to say artisanal mining, we need to be very aware what's behind. In many places, organized crime, but also the equipments that are being used are so expensive. And of course, sometimes we ask, but there is legal and illegal mine and illegal mine. No, there are mining with papers and mining with no paper. That's the big difference, because the impacts are about the same. There's no such sustainable mining or green mining. So just to finish, then I think we need to review, to amplify the voices of the peoples, demand social environment justice, and promote a new economy that gives life and does not kill, that includes and does not exclude, that humanize and not dehumanize, but first of all, the rights of nature. I think the rights of nature, it's one of the big step that we need to start to agree. Each element, each human and non-human, they have a dignity in itself, in conjunction, articulated. So we need to be a prophetic church, funding not only in rhetoric, but trying to see the goodness and the richness that are in the different territories, and how we can stress them, and how we can go together to find different solutions for this. There's no solution in destruction and through only profits.
Thank you, Brother Rodrigo. I think that you have also replied to some more questions regarding the common home and how we can care for the common home as religious people. So you have already said about it, and the importance also of the dialogue, because someone is commenting, especially in Africa, that the tension and conflict that occur in Africa, especially in rural communities, are due to the lack of dialogue between political leaders or community leaders and the population itself. So I think you have replied to both. Thank you, brother. And now these ones for Brother Elvis, a bit more specific for you, brother. Regarding the partnership between the USA and the Congo, the agreements have changed. Trump wants some minerals critical of the Congo, but because of the lack of credibility of the government in place, he wants to obtain them from Rwanda, which is his former partner. And Sister Rose, yes, sorry, I'm gonna come to the question. What are ways that we can make companies responsible for destroying lands, water, and so forth? What can we do? This is one question, Brother Elvis. Then one more is, in Europe, we don't hear much about projects, all this, but do you have advocacy action? Are there advocacy action? How can we have global oversight? And is this a possibility in our world today? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me start with the first question on DRC. So the DRC situation, like put by the question, is that the USA who are trying to come like rescuing DRC from the conflict, the USA has played a big role in starting the conflict in DRC. The evidence is all over the place. Like the EU also signed a memorandum of understanding with Rwanda so that Kagame can help them to cause the conflict in DRC and get the natural resources. The memorandum of understanding is no longer a secret, and the EU has started sanctioning Rwanda because the memorandum of understanding has come to light. So the USA is not coming like a savior. It is just a way of trying to say, okay, if I can go through a third party, I can use someone as a shadow, I can also do it myself. So what Donald Trump has done is just to come out openly to come kind of grab the way the USA has behaved towards Congo. Congo has never been allowed to exist freely from these multinational corporations, and it's a victim of geopolitics, because it's a known secret that the international community, these great powers, like if you read in the book of this American Jewish international relations mastermind, is called John J. Scheimer has written a book called The Tragedy of Great Power Politics. So it talks about these great powers, and they say that the one who controls the resources of Congo controls the global economy. Yeah. So I'm not trying to justify their behavior, but I want to put in context so that you understand what has been going on. So the question is, how can we make sure that we hold these multinational corporations accountable? They are multinational corporations, and other companies that are destroying the Congo, for instance, and other African countries. I can't say it is impossible, but it's very difficult. I'm a realist. I'm not a pessimist, but I'm a realist. So to be realistic, because what they do what they call social engineering. Social engineering, they come and they manipulate people, and then some people who don't understand metapolitics, these are very high politics, will think that it is the Congolese fighting, So if you tell them that actually it is not the Congolese who are fighting, the Congolese have just been put in this crossfire. The fight is caused by these multinational corporations who are supported by their countries, So first of all, we need to understand this before we can hold these countries accountable. So holding these countries, first we start with the multinational corporations. To hold multinational corporations accountable, there is what you have been pushing for, what we call the International Binding Treaty, which is going to break the monopoly and power of these multinational corporations so that we give back the power to the states. The multinational corporations have taken away power from the countries, and now it's like sovereignty is no longer an issue. The multinational corporations can do whatever they want and they will get away with it. The example is what the late president of Tanzania, John Pombe Magufuli, tried to do. Magufuli tried to discipline these companies that store resources from Tanzania before he took office. When he got in office, he saw the documents they had signed. He said, only a madman or a drunken fool can sign this kind of a contract. So Magufuli cancelled those. And what happened in return? Because among the companies that were, or multinational corporations that were affected, was Barrick, which is a Canadian company. Whenever a Tanzanian plane flew their plane to Canada, it was grounded. You see, every time Tanzania tried to export goods, they were compounded by Barrick with the help of the international chamber, what we call the International Center for Arbitration, which this arbitration center favors the multinational corporations, So this has made it very difficult. However, it's not impossible. What we need at that level is to push for the international binding treaty, which has been going on at the level of the United Nations. And once the international binding treaty passes, it will break down the corporate impunity which has been going on. Then when it comes to state parties who are causing wars in Africa, like in the case of Congo, the state parties, the approach is to make sure that we support the International Criminal Court. The ICC is being undermined. I don't know if you have been following. The USA trying to sanction the judges that decided against Israel, the judges that said that we should arrest Netanyahu, and the prosecutor or the ICC has also been sanctioned. These people can't enter the USA, and they have been put on a list of terrorists and so forth. The USA is trying to undermine the ICC with its ally Israel. We are supposed to support the ICC. It's only through supporting the ICC and the ICJ that once we support the International Court of Justice, then there is a very high hope that the International Court of Justice can issue more judgments that are going to condemn heads of states that are causing wars in other countries. And in this way, these international heads of states, will start losing the image, because their countries will lose image. For instance, Kagame can say he doesn't care, he says all those things in TV, but actually, if you have noticed, whenever the international media is attacking him, he cares because it changes the behavior. So we need to support the credibility of the ICJ and the ICC. Otherwise, going to war against Rwanda or other countries is not a solution. The solution is to use these existing institutions to punish these countries. And then the last question about the platform where we can do advocacy on issues like the way I presented about Zambia. Networks like Africa, Europe, Faith and Justice Network, we have opened our antenna in Zambia. It's a young antenna, it's growing. We are networking with others. There is the initiative of what we call the Critical Raw Materials Initiative, where we collaborate with different actors, Caritas and JCTR, which is run by Jesuits, and then other actors who are working on critical raw materials and extractive industry in Zambia and DRC. So we are working on this. It's still growing. And then the hope for that it will keep expanding, is that it has received a very good support so far from the local actors in Zambia. Now, to connect this with the international community, is that in Brussels, where Africa, Europe, Faith and Justice Network, AEFJN, is based, where we have our secretariat, we have a networking initiative with other actors like Caritas International, we have EU Code, the Pax Christ, and many more Catholic and non-Catholic actors in this initiative. And of course, my brother Rodrigo from Latin America, we joined together also. So that's what I can say, where we are doing that. And also Tim mentioned that in the USA, the religious also network is also looking at the case of Zambia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elvis and Lucia. So we are coming to a closure. Time is not on our side. Brother Rodrigo, your parting shot.
Well, just say thanks. And I think there are some strategies that are important, that are more close to those who are living with the people and within these issues, the so-called community-led resistance to mining, based on valuing agroecology, defending territory and nature. It means ancestral land, spirituality, diversity, and also together with political and legal mobilizations, and building more solidarity and sustainable ways of life. And we can see already some results in the territories. There are small results, like in Bolivia, and the communities, Palos Blancos, Alto Benin, they were able to pass municipal laws, and declared all the territory as agroecological territory free from mining, which is something important. In Brazil, we have some attempts, not already in terms of law, but in terms of people's decision, trying to block the expansion of the mining in the territories, but mostly it's trying to rethink the territories through social environmental justice, popular leadership, and political and community alliances. So thank you for this opportunity. We have an important meeting of negotiations on November at COP30, but maybe the most important is the possibility of the People's Summit, different groups, different organizations, people together, and create again a space for dialogue, a space for reflecting the struggles of the different reactions, trying to overcome this mentality of thinking the nature as something for our usage, but not its dignity together with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brother Rodrigo. And really, what we bring home today is, first of all, the complexity of this issue. It's not a simple thing because everything is interconnected, as Pope Francis severally told us. Secondly, we realize that we need really to understand the bigger picture, about these issues in order to comprehend such complexity. And the third point is that really there is hope. And we need, as you said, to go back to the territories. We need to reconnect with the legal avenues that are there. And we need also to advocate for overcoming the governance and legal weaknesses, that give leeway to transnational corporations and to the national security capitalism, really to bring on such a destructive economy. And I would like to thank the Justice and Peace Commission of USG-UISG for hosting us. I would like also to thank Sister Jacinta for leading us in the opening prayer, and also Father Prosper for the interpretation service, and Lucia for giving us the technical assistance together with Father Roy, and also for monitoring the chat and facilitating this dialogue. So I would like to say just thank you to all participants for having joined us and having interacted with us. I think that really in front of very difficult and complex situations and realities, it is necessary to come together as we did today, to share ideas and to collaborate, because as soon as we overcome isolation, immediately we start seeing some light, we start seeing opportunities, we see that actually it is possible to do something about it. So God bless you all. Thank you very much, and keep connected with us. Bye-bye.